our real priorities around meeting access targets and all of the other commitments that this would line up behind. Okay, so I'm going to keep us moving. I think we've got Helen and Angela. Any word on George yet, Jimmy?
Should be working now, the mic. Can you hear me now?
All right, okay. So, George, we're going to do bronchoscopy and then we'll flick back to yours at the end, if that's all right. So,
yeah, no worries.
Helen, over to you.
Thank you. So, hi, I'm Helen. Unfortunately, Angela is poorly today, so it's,
oh dear.
it's just me.
Just you, right? Thank you,
Yes.
Helen.
I don't have the slide for this. Do you have the poster slide? I was sent.
Yeah, Helen, it's on screen for you now. Yeah, no worries. There you go.
It might be mine. Mine's lagging. I'm afraid I'm still on the old slides, but never mind. Right. So as a bit of a recap, I know I've presented to some people here before. So our bronchoscopy unit, we're quite small. We undertake about 950 procedures a year. And as a team, we sort of started on some improvement work. We undertook a process map of the service and completed a team affinity exercise to try and identify inefficiencies and improve our capacity in our current pathways and reduce waiting times. Lost procedure capacity due to a high rate of avoidable cancellations was identified as a key area where efficiencies could potentially be made. Avoidable cancellations were due to incorrect pre and post procedure preparations and DNAs. Any lost procedure capacity has financial implications for the trust and directly impacts on staff utilisation and patient waiting times. So the initial data, which we collected over a 6-month period, showed that we had 119 avoidable cancellations, which equated to 19% of our capacity. So it was a huge problem for the department. Angela, our clerical officer, proposed the addition of an extra step in our process, which was to add a telephone call up to 72 hours before the patient's appointment. And our aim was to reduce the avoidable cancellations by 100% by December 2023. During this call, we were going to confirm, or we do confirm, what test the patient is coming in for, where and when it'll be done, any changes to medication, if they're on anticoagulation they need to make, and reiterate all of their pre and procedure instructions. And finally confirming that they've got an appropriate adult to stay with them for 24 hours post-procedure, answering any questions on the way, or referring on to a nurse if it's on in the call. And then to ensure that we've got some sustainability, a nurse will take on this task in the absence of a clerical officer. The data was collected for a further 10 weeks after the introduction of a call. Hopefully you can see the graphs. And there was a reduction in nearly all key identifiers, and we achieved a 71% reduction of avoidable cancellations until then. We're also mindful at this point that many of our patients have received bad news and they're having a lot of correspondence with the hospital, so we didn't want to overwhelm them. So we had another little project to collect their feedback, which all of it came back positive. They all found it useful, it put them at ease, they were happy to be able to ask questions. So yes, so with a lot of QI work, the emphasis is on streamlining and removing steps, but this piece of work has showed us that as long as that adds value, it's fine to add an extra step. And our 5-minute phone call has improved efficiency, it's increased capacity, it's reduced the clinical time wasted and the administrative burden associated with these cancellations, which we worked out equated to approximately 2 hours per patient needing cancelling. We've continued to monitor our progress, and April 23 was the first month that we achieved 100% reduction in avoidable cancellations, which is fantastic. And overall, this has improved patient experience, it's reduced our wait times, and it's contributed to service improvement in general. So our next steps are, we're looking at personalised text messages and inclusivity. So we're trying to get some text messages translated into the main languages. So we've got a basic structure and we can add the personalised sort of fasting times, etc. into them. And I'm sorry, I've gone blank now. Yeah, so hopefully by sending these text messages and also to people who have got memory problems, etc., we'll be able to capture everybody, and that will hopefully be reflected in our next PDSA. We'll see. But so far, it's been a great experience, and we've had fantastic engagement from the staff. So it's been really good.
Fantastic, thank you, Helen. Great work again. Another wonderful graph to see the progress with something that's really an absolute frontline service for patients. So wonderful work. Great. So George, can we come back to you for our final presentation? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, if we just wind back the slides to where they were. Hang on. Things frozen.
Right, I think you should be on your first slide to introduce yourself, George. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, it's just winding back. I can't quite see it. Gotcha. All right, thank you very much. So my name is George Twigg. I'm the Clinical Trials Coordinator at the NIHR Bioresource Centre Leeds. So just for a slight bit of background on the bioresource, because it is relevant to the thing I'm presenting. So what we do is we collect blood samples and saliva samples for genetic testing. The idea is that we want to learn more about a variety of rare diseases. There's about 60 we can recruit to, all different areas from immunology, rheumatology, cardiology, hematology, oncology, and so on. And also immune-mediated inflammatory disorders, which is what I lead on. Yeah, and we also identify potential cohorts for to be recalled for other studies. So it's really about learning more about the diseases and also setting up these prospective cohorts for researchers should they wish to make use of them. Next slide, please. Okay, so because we work across so many rare diseases, we have to work across a number of sites across the hospital, and we have quite a small team as well. So we have to manage things efficiently, and we have to coordinate our booked appointments effectively. And we do go into clinics, but to recruit in there, but also we set up our own appointments. We invite people in through the mail, and we started doing this during COVID. This was a more innovative way of recruiting than we had before. We had to find space, we had to get people in, but again, this meant having to organise. We found it a little bit challenging at first. Also, we've begun to collaborate with other teams across the trust. So they're involved in the study. Some of them, they just point us towards patients. Some of them, they recruit on our behalf. And some of them, they say, I've got a patient, can you get their routine bloods for them and also involve them in the research at a certain point? But our existing appointment calendar wasn't accessible to members of staff outside our team. So it was quite difficult for our collaborators to know when and where our staff were available, so they could tell these patients when they could be involved with the research. So as we opened ourselves to more and more teams and started collaborating with more and more teams across the trust, we had to think of another system. Next slide, please. So we collaborated with the research informatics team, R&I, which has expanded in the last few years, as you may know, to create a new appointment system. So the idea would be it'd be secure, it'd be very simple for anyone to use, it'd be accessible to the staff members inside and outside our team. So we told them what information we wanted to be included. We tested the platform on a trial basis, and then we reported back any problems. So just applying one of the LIM methodologies to it, if you think of it in terms of 5 S's, we had to sort what needed to be on the scheduler. We wanted the essential information that would enable, for example, phone number if the participant hasn't turned up yet, what particular rare disease project within the bioresource they were to be recruited to, and so on and so forth. And like I say, simplify it so that all of the necessary information is there. And to sweep it before each week's appointment, so just to check that the information is complete, and we have to standardize this, so all this stuff is written into our project pathway. It's there with our data processes, and finally to sustain it by reviewing the process, making sure we were working collaboratively, thinking about what worked and what didn't, which is later in the presentation. And we really engaged the collaborating teams by sort of stressing this would be much easier for them. They could just go into the appointment scheduler and put the appointments on, and we would be notified about it. And also in moving towards a more centralized and more paperless system, moving away from the G Drive to the SharePoint. So the idea was that everything would be on there. Our appointments are on there, our protocols are on there, our documents are on there, and what have you. Okay, next slide, please. So after the trial period, we began to use the system for all study appointments, and we said to our collaborating teams, okay, you don't need to necessarily notify us because you'll be able to put it on here and then we'll be able to see it. As far as sort of discrete metrics show improvement, we weren't able to measure anything like incomplete or missed appointments per month because it wasn't something we had done before, but we have received positive feedback from across multiple teams that the system is easy to use, the visuals are clear, and now everyone that we work with is familiar with this procedure. Next slide, please. So I think in terms of what went well, we were pleased with the communication with R&I. The API was, like I say, it was easy to use. It was clean visually. The UX was good. The staff member was receptive to our requirements and what we wanted out of it. Our team engaged with the new system fully, and yeah, the filtering options that we asked for, they make it really easy to identify missing data. You can see where there are blanks, and also you can even search for particular types of appointment. This isn't something we were able to do before very easily, but now if someone says to us, for example, how many people have you got appointments for giant cell arteritis, for instance, in the last quarter, we would be it's incredibly easy for us to provide that information. So that makes it easy for us to be across what we're doing, not just the number of people we're recruiting, but our activity as well. So of course, if the BRC needs it for their report, what's the occupancy of this room? Again, we can tell them very easily. Next slide, please. And in terms of what we do differently, I think probably next time I would trial it for more than a week or so, wait a little bit before rolling out the system. We did experience some technical issues with some data disappearing, so you'd save the data, that'd be fine, but if you went back in to enter it, you would find that certain fields, not all of them, but a couple, would be blank again, and therefore if you wanted to edit, you would have to fill it in again. And I think if we had thought to work with R&I when we developed the previous system, we could have got this off the ground a lot sooner, and that would have made things easier, especially during the pandemic. One key learning we had is that SharePoint and moving to this cloud-based system, it can be a great tool for transparency and access across teams rather than having to go through a middleman to get G Drive access, which is how it used to be. Then now we can grant access to our SharePoint, and people can just hit the ground running from there. The things that we want to do in the future, we want to bring more teams on board with the system. We are starting to work with, for example, neurology, pediatric cystic fibrosis, and they'll all be, again, added to the SharePoint. And as and when we begin to work on related research projects, it may be necessary to add more data fields to the form. For example, there might be more barcode numbers that we have to add to the samples, which are different from the ones we use as the IDs currently. But we'll work collaboratively amongst our team and amongst the teams we're working with, so we can work in a lean fashion and just make sure we're only adding the essential data fields, just so we're not cluttering it up, making it confusing for people, and running the risk of extra work where it doesn't need to be. And I think that's the end of my presentation. So thank you for listening. I hope you got something out of it.
Great. Thanks very much for that, George. We've just probably got a couple of minutes. If anybody's got a burning question for any of the great presentations we've heard today, we've had 4 fantastic presentations, all applied to real world kind of frontline challenges, and great to see the method really embedded in people's thinking around the work, and some really good themes about what adds value for patients drawn out in some of those, which I think is absolutely spot on, and also thinking about the challenges around sustainability, which I suppose is one of the things we must all think about, having done some of that work. But really great presentations. Has anybody got any questions they want to come in with? I know I can see 1 or 2 people have dropped off because we are just a bit over time, but has anybody got anything they want to ask any of our fantastic presenters? Can't actually see anybody wanting to come in, and maybe it's the temptation of the bank holiday sunshine looming for people. So Jimmy.
Yeah, just a comment, Phil, to acknowledge the effort that all the teams have made here. Thank you very much for engaging with the method and then using it and practicing it. I appreciate the honesty that Donna shared. It's not always plain sailing, and it does take a team effort, and it takes a lot of commitment to keep that going. So I appreciated that. Shout out to Helen and the team, winning competitions for posters and great work. And to be perfectly honest, KPO's had very light touch with that. It's very much been driven by them. And as you know, Phil, I shared that as a great example at board yesterday. So it's a thank you and well done for me. And I'll leave it there because you're right. A bank holiday does beckon for folks. So thanks very much, everybody. Tell your friends, it's not scary, this method of ours. It's very useful. Come and have a go.
Okay, thanks, Jimmy. So thank you to Amy, George, Donna and Helen for those, as I say, really inspiring presentations. Keep up the good work. Thanks everyone else for joining, and see you at the next report out.